Hello everyone, and welcome back. Today, I've got a batch of 5 unsettling camping stories for you, all circling around the same uncomfortable idea. Sometimes the place that looks open, quiet, and harmless is exactly the place you should have stayed away from. These stories move through old logging roads, wet campgrounds, working farmland, and those awkward little moments where you try to be polite or reasonable, even though something already feels wrong. Some are more tense, some are more personal, and a few have that specific kind of fear where help is too far away and your way out suddenly does not feel guaranteed. Before we begin, please subscribe if you enjoy these longer horror narrations, and leave a like to support the channel. Now get comfortable, settle in, and let's start with the first story. Don't camp near old logging roads just because the gate is open. I know that sounds obvious. People will say we were idiots for going down there, and fair. But at the time, it felt like a normal, cheap overnight trip. This happened on the edge of the Ozarks in late spring. Me and Caleb liked camping away from official sites once RVs and generators showed up. We had a tent, a cooler, headlamps, a water jug, tablets, a cheap filter, and a truck we trusted too much. Caleb found an old gravel road on a Forest Service map, branching off a county road past a gas station with a diner attached. No gate, no fresh sign. The road started normal, then got rougher. Red clay in the washed spots, and my phone dropped to 1 bar, and then nothing. The 4th spur dipped through pines and scrub oak and opened near a creek. It wasn't a real campsite, just one of those unofficial spots people use because other people already have. Black fire ring, busted glass, flat pine needles where a tent had obviously sat. Not nice, but good enough. Caleb stood there listening, because you wait to see if somebody comes out yelling that you're on their land. Nobody did. I looked for signs too. No purple paint, no cable, no gate lying in the weeds. We checked. We turned the truck around so it faced the way out, then unloaded. Caleb fought with the tent poles, while I put the water jug by the fire ring. The creek was maybe 20 yards downhill, shallow water running over limestone, loud enough to cover small noises. That seemed nice at the time. While Caleb was setting up, I took out my phone for a short clip. I'm not a real blogger, just a tiny account, mostly friends and coworkers. This was habit. I filmed the creek, the fire ring, Caleb telling me not to film his ass, then saw concrete below us. It was past the creek, lower than camp, half hidden by brush. At first, I thought it was a culvert, but it was too square, more like an old water catchment. I could hear water hitting concrete. I didn't go down trying to snoop. I know that sounds convenient, but I'm being honest. Caleb was busy. I had the phone and I was curious. So I walked down through briars and loose rock for maybe a minute. From the campsite, you could barely see that lower spot. There was a little side rut down there too. Grown up, but clear enough for an ATV. It stopped near the concrete wall. Most of it looked like old woods junk. Moss, rust stains, leaves in corners. But some of it looked fresh. There was a blue tarp against the wall, wet on one corner, like it had been dragged through mud. Behind it sat a bright yellow plastic can. The dirt had fresh tire tracks with water still sitting in them. I remember a length of chain too, half covered by leaves. I told myself it was hunters, locals, somebody storing tools, maybe just junk. If you've been on old forest roads, you know people leave weird stuff out there. Not everything ugly in the woods is a crime scene, so I kept filming for another second. That was probably the dumbest thing I did all day. I had the phone pointed toward the tarp when I heard something move in the brush to my left. Not a crash, just a boot scraping gravel under weeds. I lowered the phone before I turned. A man was standing at the edge of that grown-over side track. He didn't jump out or yell, which made it worse. He wore a dirty brown work jacket, muddy boots, and a ball cap pulled low. Maybe 40, maybe 50. He didn't look uphill at Caleb or over at the tent. He looked straight at my phone. "Put that away," he said. I lowered it against my leg and used that friendly idiot voice you use when you know you've annoyed somebody. "Sorry, man. We're just camping up there. Didn't know anybody used this spot." He held his hand out. Not close enough to grab it. Just enough. "Delete it." For a second, I thought he meant stop recording, so I said I wasn't recording anymore. He said, "Delete the video." Caleb called my name from up the slope. He couldn't see the guy clearly, just me standing there with my phone down like an idiot. I told the man we'd leave, and that we hadn't seen any signs. He barely reacted. "Delete it where I can see." This is where people can call me weak or stupid. I didn't argue. There was no signal. Caleb was uphill. We were down an old logging spur with no idea where that lower side road came out. The man wasn't waving a gun around, but he didn't need to. He was too calm, and he cared way too much about that clip. So I opened my camera roll. My thumb was shaking enough to piss me off. The clip was right there at the top. Creek, fire ring, tent, concrete, tarp. I deleted it. He said, "Phones keep deleted stuff." That was when my stomach dropped. Everyone knows that now. It was how flat he said it. Like this wasn't a new problem for him. I opened recently deleted and deleted it again. Then I turned the screen so he could see. "Now go back to your truck," he said. I tried one more time because I guess I wanted him to understand we weren't there to mess with anyone, but he cut me off. "Go back to your truck." That was it. No explanation, no "this is private land," no clear threat I could repeat later. He just waited until my phone was down and pointed his chin up the slope. So I went. Caleb was behind me asking what the hell that was about, and I told him to keep walking. For about 10 seconds, I thought we were lucky. Some local guy had a stash by the concrete thing. He caught me filming it, and now we were going to pack up and leave. Annoying, embarrassing, but done. Then we got back through the brush, and the campsite looked wrong. Not destroyed, just wrong. The cooler wasn't where I left it. It was turned sideways beside the truck lid, crooked, but still latched. Near the driver's door was one muddy boot print, pressed into the dry needles. Caleb saw the water jug first. It was on its side by the fire ring. Cap off, with the last of our clean water draining into the dirt. He said, "No, no, no, no," and ran to it like he could still save anything. The cap was a few feet away, ground into mud by a heel. Then we started seeing the rest. Bread mashed into pine needles, jerky scattered around like bark, the tablets wet and gritty, the filter packed with dirt. None of it was careful, just enough to make staying hard. Caleb went straight to the truck and crouched by the front tire. "Valve caps gone," he said. The tire wasn't completely flat, but it had that soft bulge at the bottom, enough that driving out on that road would be stupid. Maybe possible, but stupid. I checked my phone. Nothing. Caleb checked his too, then opened the back of the truck for the jack and spare. I wanted that to be the answer so bad. Flat tire, change it. Leave. Normal problem, normal solution. Then an engine started somewhere below us, down near that lower track. It sounded like a pickup with a bad muffler, or maybe an ATV idling behind brush. It rose a little, settled, then dropped low again. We couldn't see anything through the slope and trees. That lower rut must have curled closer to our clearing than it looked from above. Caleb had the jack handle in his hand, and both of us just stood there. Changing that tire meant kneeling beside the truck, with our lights pointed at our hands and our backs to the road. After the water, food, and tire, I was done giving things the harmless explanation. We took what we could carry fast: phones, headlamps, jackets, keys, and one small bottle Caleb had in his pack, with maybe a third of water left. I grabbed my pocket knife too, which felt stupid, but I still took it. We left the tent half open. We didn't walk in the middle of the track. If headlights came up fast, we wanted somewhere to go besides straight ahead. So we stayed near the edge, where weeds slapped our legs and the gravel rolled under our shoes. The engine moved around below us for a while. Sometimes it sounded close enough that I expected lights to come around the bend. Then it would fade, like whoever it was knew a lower road that ran parallel to ours. We never saw the vehicle. That did not make it better. We got weak service near the county road, enough for Caleb to call the tow company from that gas station. The driver asked where the truck was, went quiet when Caleb described the spur, then said he wasn't taking a wrecker down there in the dark. No turnaround, bad shoulder, no daylight. So we walked to the gas station with our jeans muddy to the knees and one flashlight almost dead. The diner side was still open. The woman behind the counter looked at us like she had seen every kind of dumb camper before, which she probably had. Then Caleb said the name of the logging road. She stopped wiping the counter. Not dramatically, she just stopped. Nobody gave us an explanation. Nobody said we had wandered into anything illegal. Nobody called the sheriff while we were standing there. And honestly, we didn't push it like we should have. The woman only said some old roads were better left alone, even when the gate was open. Later, sitting in a booth with bad coffee in front of me, I opened my phone because my hands needed something to do. The video was gone. Camera roll recently deleted, gone. But in the stupid little editing app I used for clips, there was still one draft tile that hadn't cleared right. No face, no plate, no sign, nothing anyone could use. Just a blurry gray thumbnail, barely bigger than my thumb, the concrete wall, the edge of the blue tarp, and one yellow can caught on the side of the frame. So yeah, I really liked this one. The part that got me most was not even the man telling him to delete the video, although that was already bad enough. It was coming back up the slope and realizing the campsite had been quietly sabotaged. Water poured out, food ruined, tire messed with. That is such a nasty kind of fear, because it means someone was already around them, already watching, and already deciding how trapped they should be. The blurry thumbnail at the end is a great final image too. Not proof, not an answer, just enough to know something was really there. All right, let's move on to the next one. I know this sounds like I'm making a big deal out of nothing, because nothing technically happened to me. I didn't get attacked. I didn't even see enough to say what those guys were doing. But I still don't know what I almost saw. This was during a solo section hike through the Appalachians, near the end of one of those warm, wet stretches where nothing dries right. I'm not a total beginner. I know trail etiquette. Hang your food. Don't camp on the trail. Don't wander onto private land. But I'm not some old trail rat who can read every grown-over roadbed. The shelter was packed when I got there. Rain had pushed everybody under the roof, with damp quilts and wet socks hanging from every nail. Someone was already snoring before sunset. I stood there with my pack still on, pretending I was considering staying, but I had already talked myself out of it. A spur cut off a little past the shelter, just beyond a white blaze, and the muddy side path to the privy. On my map, it looked like an old logging spur, curving back toward the main trail. I know leaving the shelter late was stupid. At the time, it felt like walking 10 more minutes to get away from wet people and snoring. I found 2 trees on a damp slope above an old dirt logging road. Not pretty, but good enough. I hung my hammock, pitched the tarp low because of the fog and clipped my pack under the same cover, near my head, close enough to reach if I leaned out. My headlamp was on the mesh pocket outside the pack. The hip belt pouch had the usual junk in it, including spare AAA batteries and a smashed drink packet. My spray was buried in the pack. My phone went in the hammock sleeve. It had barely held one bar by the shelter and had nothing down there. I got in before full dark. I could still hear the shelter uphill for a while. A laugh, a cough, a pot lid. Then that faded too. I don't know what time the engine woke me. It was late enough that under the tarp was black. At first I thought it was thunder, then it coughed and dropped into this low idle below me. ATV, maybe. Maybe an old pickup. It crawled along the logging road, stopped, then crawled again like whoever was driving. Had to keep tapping the gas. My first thought was local access. Hunters, maybe. Somebody checking a gate. Maybe that road was only abandoned to hikers like me. I was more annoyed than scared because I had left the shelter for quiet and hung myself over somebody's night route. I reached out for water or to pull the pack closer. I don't even remember which. My fingers caught the headlamp cord, the lamp twisted against the mesh pocket, and the beam came on. It shot down through a gap between the tarp and the rhododendron. For maybe 2 seconds, it lit the road below. Wet ruts. The corner of an old truck bed or a trailer. Boots near a tailgate. One figure half turned toward the bank. Then everything down there stopped. A man's voice snapped up the slope. Turn that light off. I fumbled for the button and killed it. Sorry, I'm just a hiker. Didn't mean to shine down there. No answer, just that rough idle. Then my thumb slipped. Or I hit the button halfway. The lamp blinked again, weaker this time, a quick pale flash through the same gap. Before I got it off. That was enough. The voices below broke loose. Not screaming, more like pissed off arguing. One guy hissed at another to shut up. Someone said, "Don't go up there." Another voice closer to the slope said, "He still has the light." That line is the one I keep coming back to. I kept my voice low. I'm not looking at anything. Shelter was full. I just camped up here. Someone called back, "Then lie still. No light." No looking down at the road. I shifted in the hammock, not to get out, just because suddenly I could feel every stupid part of my setup. The underquilt around me. The tarp brushing my shoulder. The wet slope below. Right at the edge of the tarp, a rhododendron branch jerked hard and snapped. After that, the next sound was boots sliding closer along the bank. This is where people will say, "I should have done something." Grabbed the spray, filmed them, yelled, "Run," whatever. But my spray was in the pack, my phone had no service, and lighting the screen would have shown my face. The tarp was low enough that I would have had to fight my way out blind. So I stayed in the hammock. The rain cover on my pack rubbed against the tree. Then a buckle clicked. He was right beside my head, not touching me, not talking, just close enough that I could hear him breathing while he worked at the outside pocket. The headlamp scraped against nylon. Then I heard the little plastic battery door pop open. 3 tiny clicks. Batteries coming out. He checked another pocket fast and rough. Then the hip belt zipper moved. A pause. Then the small rattle of the spare AAA pack. From below, somebody said, "That's enough. Come on." The man by my pack threw the empty headlamp back under the tarp. It hit my sleeping pad stuff sack and stopped there. Then he turned his head toward me and said, flat and quiet, "Do not get up. Do not shine anything. Do not look down there till morning." Then he went back down the bank. I lay there the rest of the night almost without moving. The truck, or ATV, Stayed on the road for a while. I heard more strap noise, low arguing, one hard metallic clunk, then the engine finally pulled away down the ruts. After that, it was just water dripping off the tarp. By morning, everything looked almost normal. My pack was still hanging there. The hip belt pouch was open, the headlamp was empty, and the little battery packet was gone. There were boot marks in the mud by the tree. I packed fast, though my hands were shaking so badly, I kept missing the buckles. I did not go down to look at the road. I took the spur uphill and got back to the main trail. Later that morning, I caught up with an older couple near a ridge. I asked if they knew anything about the old logging spur below the shelter. The man asked me which side I had camped on. I told him. He looked at his wife, then back at me and said, "Down there. I wouldn't camp down there." That was all I got. No story, no warning, no explanation. Maybe I just annoyed the wrong guys while they were doing something illegal and boring. I genuinely don't know. But now when I mark a campsite, I don't use old service roads as landmarks. I circle them in red and keep my spare batteries inside the hammock with me. This one has such a good quiet panic to it. I mean, being stuck in a hammock under a low tarp while someone is moving around right beside your head is honestly nightmare material. The detail that really worked for me was them taking the batteries, not the whole headlamp. That feels so specific and so threatening without being loud about it. They did not need to hurt him. They just needed to make sure he stayed blind until morning. It almost has that backwoods thriller feeling, where you know something illegal is happening nearby, but knowing too much is the actual danger. Let me know what you think they were doing down there, because I'm not sure I want the real answer. Next story. I think we accidentally let sheep out at a festival and got held at gunpoint by the farmer. We were idiots, or careless enough that I still don't know how to tell this without making myself look worse. This was when I was a student. My friend Ellie and I went to a small outdoor festival near the Welsh border, the kind with food vans and camping on a working farm. It had rained all afternoon. By the time we arrived, the field was mud and tents almost touching. The volunteer at the entrance said the overflow area was nearly full too, but we could try the far edge. He added, "Don't block the farm track, and don't go through closed gates. Farmers still using the land." I remember that because, yeah, that should have been enough. My phone was almost dead from trying to find signal. Ellie's was in her rucksack with a power bank. We were wet, hungry, and doing that stupid thing where you convince yourself the bad option is reasonable because you're tired. Past the last row of tents, there was a low, dry stone wall. Over it, the grass looked less trampled and just dry enough. There was a stile nearby, a hedge line, and below us, cars passed on a narrow lane, tires on wet tarmac, normal countryside noise. It looked like the forgotten edge of the same field, so we climbed over. There wasn't a locked gate or a warning sign, just a sagging bit of wire and sheep netting between the wall and a wooden post. Our tent would fit if we angled it, except one guy line ran straight into the wire. One hook was rusty, and the whole thing looked like old junk fencing. I know now that looked old does not mean doesn't matter. In rain and half dark, that was honestly how I saw it. We didn't cut it. I lifted the hook off, Ellie held the wire back, and we moved it maybe 2 feet so the guy line wouldn't rub. Then we hooked it back, more or less how it had been. There were sheep beyond another wall, white shapes in the dark, but they looked far away. I didn't connect them to that wire at all. We got the tent up badly, but upright, and threw our stuff inside. My phone ended up in my jacket. Ellie's rucksack stayed by the door. The festival bass faded, rain ticking on the fly sheet, and the odd car down on the lane. Then I woke up to light moving across the tent. At first, I thought it was security. Then a man outside said, "Out, both of you." Now, I crawled out in wet socks with my jacket half on. Ellie came out behind me, saying we were sorry and we'd move. Then she saw the shotgun. The farmer stood maybe 10 feet away in a dark work coat. He wasn't waving the gun around. He held it low across his body, but when I shifted towards the tent, the muzzle shifted with me. Who touched the wire? I froze just long enough to make it worse. Who opened the bloody gap? I tried to explain that we'd only moved the loose bit because of the tent. I was trying to sound normal, which is hard when you have no shoes on and there's a shotgun between you and your phone. He kept looking past us, towards the wall. "Did you see sheep down by the lower lane?" I said, "No." He asked again. Ellie said we would pack up and leave right now, and she turned towards the tent because all our stuff was there. The gun came up enough to stop her. "Hands where I can see them," he said. "Don't go near that tent. I don't know what you've got in there." Then I understood. We had no control. The tent was a few steps away. Inside were our phones, boots, her power bank, my dry coat, everything. He moved us closer to the wall and made us stand by the bit of wire while he checked it with his torch. I could see marks in the mud, near the bottom of the netting. Hoof marks, I think. There was a dirty clump of wool caught low in the twist of wire. He wasn't mainly angry about trespassing. He kept saying sheep, lower gate, lane. He said there was no verge and no light down there and cars cut through too fast. If one of his animals got hit, he'd be the one dealing with it, not us. Ellie asked if she could at least get her coat. He lifted the gun again, so we stayed. A car passed somewhere below, and all three of us went quiet. I remember listening for brakes or a thump. Nothing came. Then he said his wife was checking the top field. I thought he was just trying to scare us, but a few minutes later, we heard a quad bike. She came through a gate further up, more awake than him, and furious in a different way. She snapped at him for being an idiot with the gun, but she didn't let us leave. She checked the wire herself and asked who had unfastened it. I said I had. Ellie said we both had. She looked at us like that made no difference. By almost dawn, they let us pack up. The farmer came back with mud up to his knees and said, "Back through the camping field." Not the lane. Nobody showed us an injured sheep. Nobody said outright that it was our fault. But the wool was still stuck in the wire. And later, when we passed the food vans carrying the wet tent between us, some bloke waiting for coffee said one of the local farmers had sheep trouble by the road in the night. We didn't go to the organizers. We didn't call the police. What were we going to say? We climbed over a dry stone wall, moved a fence on working farmland, and then got scared. When the farmer found us, we drove home with the wet tent leaking into the boot. The last thing I saw before we turned out was a farm Land Rover down by the lower road. Hazards still blinking. This one is different from the others, but I think that actually makes it memorable. It is not really a monster in the woods story. It is more like one stupid decision turning into a very real, very ugly countryside situation. The strongest part for me was the farmer not acting theatrical with the shotgun. He is angry, exhausted, and scared about the sheep near the road, which makes the whole thing feel more grounded and uncomfortable. You can understand why the narrator was terrified, but you can also see why the farmer completely lost patience. That is what makes it awkwardly effective. Nobody comes out looking great. All right, let's keep going. A seasonal camper locked me in his shed because I stopped accepting his help. I know that sounds stupid. Most people hear that my phone, boots, jacket, and car keys were away from me, and stop right there. Like, why would you let that happen? Fair question. I ask myself that a lot. This happened at Miller Lake, a family campground I went to as a kid. Tent sites, seasonal trailers, gravel roads, a bathhouse, a little office, and a night attendant on a golf cart. My friends wanted a cheap weekend after finals, so I suggested it. I booked the site under my name and drove us there in my old Subaru. The reservation tag had my last name on it, and the keys stayed in my rain jacket pocket while we unloaded. We got there late Friday, right before the office closed. The woman at check-in gave us a windshield tag, circled our site on a paper map, and said cell service got spotty by the lake. The attendant came around after 10. Our site was across from seasonal trailers, with the bathhouse path behind us. For about an hour, it felt familiar in a good way. Then it started raining. Not a movie storm, just cold rain that got into everything. The tarp sagged, water pooled under one corner of Mark's tent, and everyone got annoyed fast. Jess went to the bathhouse. Tyler and Aaron tried to fix the collapsed side with a broom handle and rope. I tried checking the radar, but my phone was at 12% and barely loading. Tyler kept asking where the power bank was, because we had used it in the car and left it on the picnic table like idiots. The office lights were off. Annoying, not dangerous. I was pulling at the tarp when an old man called over from the seasonal lot across the gravel. "You folks need a real tarp?" He was under the awning of an older white and tan camper. Skinny guy, late 70s maybe. I told him we were okay. We were not okay. About 30 seconds later, he came over with a folded navy tarp and some bungee cords. His name was Ron. He said he'd been seasonal there every year since God quit counting, which I fake laughed at because I didn't know what else to do. He was a little much, but he actually helped. Then he saw the power bank sitting in the rain and clicked his tongue. "Don't leave that out here. I've got an outlet under my awning." That did not feel weird enough to refuse. He was an old man at a family campground, maybe 50 feet from us, with other trailers around. I know that doesn't make someone safe, but refusing felt ruder than accepting. So I carried my phone and the power bank over to Ron's awning. He had a plastic table and an extension cord running to the power post. I plugged everything in beside his trailer door and watched my phone climb from 12% to 13%. Then Ron read my last name off the reservation tag. "Your dad ever come up here in a blue pickup?" My dad had an old green Dodge when I was little. Not blue, but yeah, we used to come there. Ron said he remembered a big guy who backed in Crooked on Loop C. My dad did back in Crooked, so I filled in the blanks for him. He didn't have to earn all my trust himself. I handed him some of it. By then, my boots were soaked and caked with campsite mud. Ron pointed at the narrow maintenance shed beside his camper. "Kick those off there a minute. Floor's concrete. They'll drain better." That made sense. My socks were already damp, and I figured I was going right back across the loop once my phone charged a little. I left my boots by the shed door. Then he said my rain jacket was dripping onto the outdoor carpet and should hang inside, away from the cord. Technically, that also made sense. So I hung it on a hook inside the shed, keys still in the pocket, because I was thinking about water dripping on an extension cord, and not about how dumb it was to separate myself from my keys. After that, everything became one of those just one more second situations. Ron asked me to hold the tarp, move a plastic bin, then steady the awning flap while he found another cord. None of it was alarming by itself. Every single thing had a normal explanation, if you wanted one badly enough. I kept looking back across the loop. Tyler's flashlight moved near our tents, but the rain made everything blurry. When I called once, I don't think anyone heard me. A couple of times I said I should get back. Ron kept giving me little reasons not to. Phone still charging. Boots should sit another 5 minutes. He had the good cords somewhere. He wasn't acting scary in the obvious way. He just got heavier, more personal. He talked about old seasons and young campers who take help and can't even stay to talk. I laughed where I thought I was supposed to. I hate that, but I did. I kept trying to smooth things over because I didn't want a weird conversation with an old man to turn into a conflict. At that point, my phone was under his awning, my boots were by his shed, and my jacket with my keys was inside it. Going back across the gravel in wet socks seems stupid if this was only going to take another minute. When the rain eased up, I finally set it straight. I need to get back over there. Ron didn't answer. He bent over a plastic bin, sorting through cords like he hadn't heard me, or like he wanted me to say it again. I stood there in damp socks, looking at my phone by the outlet. It had enough battery to turn the screen back on, but not enough that I wanted to unplug it yet. Stupid, I know. Still trying to be practical. Then I remembered my jacket. I stepped toward the shed and said I was just grabbing my boots and coat. Ron said, sure, but his voice changed. More disappointed. The shed was narrow and cluttered. Folded tarps, buckets, a cracked cooler, concrete floor. My socks stuck cold to the floor as soon as I stepped in. One boot was by the door. The other had been shoved under the bottom shelf behind a bucket. My jacket wasn't on the hook by the door either. It was farther in, half covered by a folded tarp. That was the first moment I stopped trying to be polite in my own head. I went for the jacket first, because the keys were in it and Ron stepped into the doorway behind me. He didn't rush. He didn't grab me. He just stood there with one hand on the frame, looking at me like I was rude. You kids are always in a hurry, he said. I told him I appreciated the help, but my friends were waiting. That's what I mean, he said. Help, then off you go. Nobody talks anymore. I reached for my jacket. He caught the shoulder of it before I could pull it free. Not hard. Just enough that I understood he wasn't giving it to me. I said, Ron, I need my coat. He said he was only helping, and now I was acting like he had done something wrong. I told him nobody said that, I just needed my stuff. Then I tried to move around him. Ron stepped backward out of the shed, still holding the door with one hand. For half a second, I thought he was making room. Then he pulled it shut, wood against frame, then metal scraping into place outside. A slide bolt. I hadn't even noticed it when I came in. That was when everything finally caught up to me. My phone was outside under his awning. One boot was on the floor, and the other was under the shelf. My jacket was not in my hand, and my car keys were in the pocket. I was standing on concrete in wet socks, in a shed that smelled like mildew and old gasoline, with an old man on the other side of the door telling me to calm down. I hit the door with my palm and yelled. Ron said I was getting myself worked up. He said the bolt must have caught. He said he didn't like being accused. I don't even remember accusing him of anything. I remember checking my pockets, like my phone might magically be there, and trying to jam one muddy boot onto a wet sock. The reason anyone came back wasn't because they suddenly realized I was in trouble. Tyler came looking for the power bank. Their last phone was dying, and they needed the flashlight and radar. He told me later he thought I was still under the awning talking to Ron. Then he saw my phone plugged in by itself and heard one dull thump from the shed. He called my name once. I yelled back so hard my throat cracked. After that, it got loud fast. Tyler started shouting for Mark and Aaron. A porch light came on at the next seasonal trailer. Somebody yelled for Ron to open the damn door. Ron didn't do it right away. He kept talking over everyone, saying I had been helping him, saying I got worked up, saying he didn't know why I was yelling. The night attendant came up the gravel loop in a golf cart a few minutes later. The part I still don't like is that he didn't act shocked. By then, Ron had shoved my jacket back at me, and I had one boot halfway on, like giving the stuff back proved nothing happened. Ron kept saying I misunderstood. I slipped. I got embarrassed. I made it into a whole thing. My boot was right there, even though Tyler had to pull it from under the shelf. My jacket was right there, even though it had been under a tarp. My keys were still in the pocket, which Ron said like that cleared everything up. We didn't sleep much. In the morning, I went to the office while my friends packed wet gear into trash bags. The manager said there had been complaints about Ron before, gear arguments, people asking to move away from him, times where he helped too much and got angry after. Nobody said he had locked anyone in a shed. When we pulled out, the wet reservation tag was still tied to our site post, flapping against the wood, with my last name still readable in black marker. This one genuinely made my skin crawl. Ron is scary because he does not start as a villain. He starts as the helpful old guy with a tarp, an outlet, and a familiar campground story, and every little request seems just reasonable enough to go along with. That is what hits hard here. The danger is not one sudden attack. It is the slow separation from every way out. Phone, boots, jacket, keys. By the time the shed door closes, you can look back and see how many tiny red flags were stacked together. Also, the attendant not seeming shocked is a rough little detail. That says a lot without saying too much. And now, the final story. My girlfriend cut our tent so I wouldn't leave for work. I was 22, a few days from starting a seasonal job at a resort in the Adirondacks. My girlfriend and I had booked 3 nights at a state park campground. Before I left, Site 18, gravel pad, restroom building down the loop, my Corolla beside us. That car was my way to the job. Our setup was cheap, but normal. Dome tent, patched rainfly, cooler, flashlight, duct tape. At night, I put my car keys in a little pouch in the mesh pocket by the tent door. Not because I'm organized, I just hate digging through wet jeans for keys. She seemed fine on the drive, mostly. At camp though, she kept asking if I really had to leave Monday, how much gas money I had, if I could push the job back one day. She kept going to the restroom building for signal. She also had 2 trash bags of clothes with her duffel, and said she hadn't sorted laundry. I believed her. I believed a lot of easy answers that weekend. The first evening was normal enough. We got the tent up on wet gravel and tried to act like things weren't weird. Then she brought up my leaving again. She said there was some housing thing with her roommate, and motels were stupid expensive. I told her I could help call people in the morning, but I couldn't miss my first day. I meant it as practical. She heard no. It rained that night. I woke up to the zipper moving and gravel crunching outside. There was a quick light near the car, or maybe by the restrooms. She came back fast and whispered that she'd gone to the bathroom and thought somebody had walked between the sites. I asked if she was sure. She said, maybe. She didn't want me going out there, so I didn't. I told myself it was somebody cutting through to the bathroom, or a raccoon, or just campground noise. In the morning, my boot was missing. Then I noticed water creeping to one sleeping pad. The rainfly by the vestibule had been cut crooked, and the duct tape wouldn't stick because the fabric was soaked. My key pouch wasn't in the mesh pocket either. It was in the mud under the tent edge with grit stuck in the zipper. Near the car, one folding mug was knocked over, and the gravel had dirty smears through it. Too messy to tell anything. She said she'd heard steps by the car too. Maybe seen someone near the restroom building, but hadn't woken me because she was scared I'd go outside, and I believed enough of it. The host office was closed. Nearby sites were half empty, and my phone had one bar. Some idiot could have walked in and done pointless damage. I didn't leave right away. People will say I should have, but the keys were wet. One boot was gone, the tent was leaking, and I had hours of driving ahead on no sleep. So I pulled the rainfly off to tape it from underneath. That's when the outside creep story fell apart. When I lifted the vestibule fold, the cut started tucked under the flap, back toward the zipper line. Not where somebody outside would reach. You'd have to open the entrance or be halfway inside the vestibule to get a blade there. I stood there holding the wet fabric, waiting for it to become something else. Then I showed her and asked, "Why did you do this?" She denied cutting the tent. Then she said the keys must have fallen out. Then she got mad and said I would have tried to drive off half asleep in the rain. That was the first time she said it that way. After that, it came out ugly and in pieces. Her roommate wasn't just annoying. She was getting pushed out. She said she could sleep in her car, then said she couldn't, then said motel like it was impossible. Somehow, my car, my tent, and my drive north had become her backup plan. It didn't sound like some mastermind thing. It sounded like panic after it had already done damage. We left that day anyway. I found my boot behind the restroom building after 20 minutes, soaked and packed with mud. I rinsed the key pouch with bottled water and checked the Corolla before I trusted it to start. On the drive, she kept saying she didn't mean to leave us without a way out. Not for real. But the keys had still been in the mud. The shelter had still been cut. I dropped her at a friend's place. Later, someone we both knew texted me saying she told people there had been some creep at the campground. I just wrote back, "Not exactly." I kept the rainfly because I couldn't afford a new one before work started. Every time I pulled my gear out, I saw where the cut started on the inside. That ending felt rough in a very personal way. This one is not about strangers in the woods. And honestly, that may be why it lands. The scariest part is realizing the creep at the campground story was being built by someone inside the tent with him. The cut starting from the inside is such a simple, nasty reveal. No big twist speech, no dramatic proof, just wet fabric in his hands and the whole story changing shape. It also feels sad because it does not read like some genius plan. It reads like panic, control, and desperation turning dangerous. I'm curious how you read this one because to me it might be the most uncomfortable of the batch. And that is where we're going to end today's video. I liked this batch a lot because all of these stories had that same uncomfortable feeling. Being somewhere quiet, trying to explain things normally, and slowly realizing you may have already made the wrong choice. Some of them were more openly threatening, some were more personal, and a couple were just messy in that real life way where nobody handles the situation perfectly. But that almost makes them creepier. Let me know in the comments which story stuck with you the most and what you would have done in any of these situations. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and check out the other links if you want more stories and extra content. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I really appreciate it. Take care of yourselves, and goodbye.